Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Bove and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
Well, Bills fans, you wanted a splash? You got a splash. At about 9:30 p.m., does that qualify as being after dark, Matt
Yes.
Bove?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
I'm old now, so I would say anything after 8 o'clock qualifies as
Yeah.
either being after dark or Sabres after dark.
I totally get it. So the Bills at about 9:30 or so on Tuesday night, we learn they are going to sign edge rusher Joey Bosa to a 1-year, $12 million deal. Lots of people reporting it, including Diana Russidi, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport. So this is happening, it appears. Joey Bosa to the Buffalo Bills. Okay, your initial reactions, Matt, when you heard this.
Bean is swinging for the fence. One of two things can happen. He can hit a home run or he can strike out swinging. But I like that he's taking the swing. I think Joey Bosa is a player that comes with a lot of reward and not a ton of risk. They gave him a good amount of money, but it's a 1-year deal. So I think that mitigates the potential concern about the player and their health. The other thing that I like is that after just looking into it a little bit, he's going to play in a much more rotation-heavy defense than I'm sure he's used to in Los Angeles, and I think that's a way of keeping a player healthy. He's not going to be asked to play 75% of snaps here. That's just not how the Bills play. On a pass-rushing situation, he'll be in there, and if they don't need him, hey, go take a blow on the sideline, and then, we'll have Solomon come in or whoever come in.
I like your take about risk reward. I'm a little bit different on the risk part. I think it's a little higher risk than what you're saying because of this. Not I agree that like the risk is a little minimal for the team's sake, but it's certainly a risk as far as you're looking at his health history. And I'll say it this way. If this works out, he could be the difference of winning the Super Bowl. That's how good he can be. Mm-hmm. If this works out and he's the player you think he can be and he can stay healthy, he could be the difference in winning the Super Bowl. If it doesn't, then the team is still going to be really good. And they're still going to be having a chance to win the Super Bowl. But they're going to be right back where they were, Matt, which is searching for an answer to get to the quarterback. And we're going to have the same questions. And people will say, well, why'd you go out and spend money on a guy that couldn't stay healthy in his career? So, yes, I agree with you. It is risk with it is reward with risk. To me, the risk is, hey, if it doesn't work out, you're pretty much back in the same spot, hoping and praying you can get to the quarterback. If it does work out, he could be the difference to hoist the Lombardi Trophy.
Sure, but aside from Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Max Crosby, or TJ Watt, or Micah Parsons, who was a sure thing this summer, or this offseason, I should say, because we're not in the summer yet? Nobody is a sure thing. Everybody's coming with some sort of level of risk. So to your point about that, I understand what you're saying. If he doesn't work out, then you're in the same position. But I don't know who they could have added this offseason that would have made it feel like, okay, the defensive line has been fixed. There's still going to be questions about the defensive line. But I would imagine most people feel a lot better with, I almost said with Myles Garrett, with Joey Bosa and with Greg Rousseau as your starting defensive ends. Like, that is a very, very formidable group.
No doubt. No doubt. I think that if you're a Bills fan, you should be happy your team made this move today because they're trying to win a Super Bowl, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Like you said, they're swinging for the fences. You should be happy. But I do think it comes with more risk than most players simply because of the health concerns and because of the money you're paying. 1 year, $12 million. Now we'll see what it's like. My guess is there are going to be some void years in there, maybe, spread out the cap hit a little bit. We'll see what the cap hit winds up being for this particular year. There are guys you could have signed who aren't as good, who come with less risk as far as health is concerned, but those guys could still have maybe the same kind of risk as far as, how productive they could be, I guess. So no doubt about it. Listen, this is a big name player who comes into a defense and has the skill set, much like we discussed with Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer, did we discuss Josh Palmer here? I think we did, right? No,
we haven't.
Oh my gosh, we haven't even done that.
We haven't talked about anybody.
Okay, yet. So we'll get to him in a second because I'm going to say this about Bosa, and it's going to relate to Josh Palmer. The Bills went out in free agency, and they identified the spots on their team where they said, where are we deficient? What do we need to add to as far as not just talent, but a certain skill set?
Yeah.
And Josh Palmer is that skill set on offense. And Joey Bosa is that skill set on defense. And of course, Joey Bosa, and by the way, teammates in LA with the Chargers, but Joey Bosa is a big, big name in this league. And by the way, he's going to be 30 years old this offseason. As I said however many podcasts about Myles Garrett, who's 29, is going to be 30 in December. He's not much older than Myles Garrett. He's a few months older, half a year older. He's not that old. He just has a lot of wear and tear where he's been injured. Here's the other thing I'll say about this. The Bills are banking on, and they have done this before, they have a lot of faith and confidence in their health and training and strength and conditioning program, which ironically, they just fired their strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
They are banking on their own staff keeping him healthy. And does he have to be a 17-game high percentage player? As you said, no. Keep him healthy to the playoffs, really.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that exact post from Ben Solak of ESPN, and it just said, put him in bubble wrap until the playoffs. And then at that point, just let him go. And honestly, I feel like with the rotation the Bills play, you will need to see flashes of him over the course of the season. But I feel like you like at least I do. I don't want to speak for you. I like the chances of him getting home if he's healthy and they're in a big time moment more than I did of Von Miller last year. And this is essentially going to be replacing Von Miller on the defensive line. Now, we don't know what they'll do for the rest of the offseason. They could still draft a guy who could turn into an absolute stud. Maybe Javon Solomon becomes like a dude. We don't know what's going to happen. But Joey Bosa, I think, gives them flexibility for the entire rest of the offseason that they didn't otherwise have. Because if they didn't make this move, let's say they go out and they add a safety, they sign a cornerback, whatever, I think we would have all gone into the draft and said, they're going to take an edge rusher, either in the first round or in the second round. Now, I think we can go into the draft and say they're going to take a defensive lineman, whether that be a D tackle or an edge rusher or a wide receiver. I think that this opens doors for them.
I think corner is big time in play right now.
Well, I want to see what they do with corner.
Sure.
I want to see
as we sit here right now.
As we sit here right now, I agree corner's in play, but I still have a feeling they're going to address it or even potentially bring back Russell Douglas. And you would still not be scared away from drafting a corner, but it just might make it a little bit lower on the priority. I like the Joey Bosa move. I don't love the player, but I love the upside. That's kind of the way it's the name is bigger than the production because he hasn't been that good in a couple years. But I think in this defense, with the way they use their players, you could get him as close to his ceiling and with as much potential as he's got.
Yeah. I like your point about if he's healthy, you like him to get home more than you would like Von Miller. I would say if all the premier pass rushers in the NFL are healthy, and we all knew they were just 100% healthy and playing, I'd put him right near the top next to Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Trey Hendrickson. I'd put him right there, maybe fourth on the list. Nick Bosa, his brother, I'd put them right there. I'd have them all a little bit ahead of Von Miller because of, Von Miller's age and where he is right now in his career. And a lot of these other young guys who are really good players. I would put Joey Bosa right there, right at the top of this type of list, that if he's healthy, the chance to make a big play in a big moment for the Buffalo Bills down the stretch. And that's the one thing that's been lacking for the Buffalo Bills, as we know, pass rush, defensive line. They haven't been getting home in the playoffs in the most critical moments. The Bills have made a very, very big move here. 1 year, $12 million is the reported salary. We'll see exactly what the cap hit is after we look at the actual contract. Joey Bosa going from the Chargers to the Bills. And I had read, and maybe you're about to say this, I don't know. Go ahead, say what you want to say.
Well, I was going to say, let me ask you this real quick because it's funny how Tuesday played itself out. Leonard Floyd gets released from the 49ers earlier in the day. And then immediately Bills fans, understandably so, go, oh, bring him back to the Bills.
And Sal Capaccio, by the way, yeah.
You as well. Then he signs his contract. Now, once again, we don't know exactly what the details look like, but we can go off of the reported numbers. Leonard Floyd, 1 year, reported $10 million. Joey Bosa, 1 year, $12.6 million. At those two prices, I like Joey Bosa's upside way more than I like the idea of Leonard Floyd. I think Leonard Floyd is the safer, has like the higher floor, but I think Joey Bosa has the much higher ceiling.
I don't disagree. Look, I'm with you here. This is a huge, huge reward if the guy stays healthy. His ceiling is through the roof. He can be a difference maker, as I've said, of actually winning the Super Bowl. I just think it does come with a lot of risk. But again, I'll go back to if the worst case scenario happens, Joey Bosa gets hurt early in the season, he's out for the year. The Bills are still really good. They're just in the same situation they've been, which is, okay, where you're finding your pass rush, right? And is that enough to get you home when it comes time in the playoffs? Joey Bosa, apparently, it was it had been reported it was only between two teams, and they weren't the Bills. It was the Miami Dolphins, and it was the San Francisco 49ers where his brother Nick was. So if that reporting is true and accurate, Matt, the Bills either A, had to, I'm sure that money had to play a factor here, had to go a little bit higher to outbid, and they obviously really wanted him in that scenario, but also Joey Bosa, how about that, picking the Bills over the Niners and the Dolphins?
I mean, picking the Bills over the Dolphins, I guess, shouldn't be like an earth-shattering surprise just based off of the success the Bills have had and how close they've gotten. And he probably feels like maybe he can push them over the edge.
But isn't he from there? I think he's from.
I think they are from. South
He
Florida.
went to. Yep, he went to St. Thomas Aquinas in Miami.
I think they're from Florida. But the other thing I was going to say is, playing with your brother, I don't think you can put a price tag on how special that would be. But I'm sure it would still have to be close. Let's say if the 49ers offered him 10 and the Bills offered him 12.6, maybe he picks the 49ers. So, yeah, maybe the Bills did have to outbid some teams. I'm okay with that. That was the thing that we talked about this offseason. Last offseason, they couldn't outbid teams for these players that other teams wanted because they didn't really have any cap space. This year, by restructuring the contracts that they did, by doing things that we probably don't even know that they've done, they opened up cap space so they could make moves like this. Last year, they could have made the Josh Palmer move. Last year, they could have made the Michael Hoecht move, but they couldn't have made the Joey Bosa move. So now they can, and I still think they could probably make a couple more.
Does it concern you that the production hasn't been all that great when it comes to sacks over the last few years? 5, 6.5, and 2.5. But I will point out 2.5 in 5 games, 6.5 in 9 games.
Yeah.
Pretty remarkable. And really good numbers, I should say. And then 5 in 14 games, although looks like he was playing injured. So it's not just the injuries. The production hasn't been overwhelming.
Well, that's why I was saying I like the risk and I like the decision to do this more than I like the player, but it's just because we haven't seen the player a ton over the last couple of years. When he's healthy, the Joey Bosa that I'm thinking of is the 2022 Joey Bosa, who's one of the premier pass rushers in the NFL. So if he splits the difference, I still think that's a win for the Bills at $12.6 million. I mean, if you said right now, would you sign up for 9 sacks for Joey Bosa? I would say, oh, yeah. Well, how many does he get in the plaplayoffs?
Right. Well, I mean, I'd sign up for 9 because I would think that he's in situations where those 9 matter. By the way, I think you mean 2021. He was injured most of 2022.
Yes, my bad.
2021, he had 10.5 sacks. His teammate, Josh Palmer, has signed. If you're done on Bosa here, we need to get to the other signings the Bills have.
Yeah, let's work our way backwards, though, right? Let's go with the ones that they did today. So, Reggie Gilliam, anything we need to add other than, hey, plays an important role on the team, probably not a shock, but really a nice player, nice guy?
I'll just lump in Reggie Gilliam and Ty Johnson and say this. The Bills literally have the exact same 6 running back / fullback right now in their roster they had when they went into training camp last year. And you could say, well, they needed a little bit different. Whatever. They scored 30 points a game. They don't.
No, they don't.
Exactly.
That's one area where I would say, nope, just do it again.
I mean, they're literally, Matt, they're running back their entire offense, basically, except for one guy, and that's Josh Palmer, who they've added. They're going to add a little bit more, and he's a replacement for Mac Hollins, roster for roster replacement, I should say, not the type of player which we'll get to in a second. But on Reggie Gilliam, very, very important special teams player for the club. Really good story, undrafted free agent out of Toledo. He's been a guy they've really relied on, and on offense. He played quite a bit last year, especially down the stretch, and did a nice job as a blocking fullback.
Yeah, I think that I like the Reggie Gilliam move, but I really like the Ty. I just really like the player because I always tend to as does everybody. This is not something like exclusive to me. I always really gravitate towards players who make big plays in big moments and feel like they live for that. And he does. He loves all of that. I think back to the Chargers game. I think back to the game against the Broncos in the playoffs. I think back to the game against the Lions. I think back to the touchdown he had in LA on the screen pass that put the Bills back into the game. He is just such a reliable pass catching third down running back for them that I really, really like what he does. And based off the reported money, 2 years, $5 million, signed me up. I thought it was going to be, when I first saw the news, I was like, okay, this is probably going to be like 2 years, $9 million or something. And then I see the numbers, and I'm like, 2 years, $5 million. Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
No doubt. And having him for that extra year is really nice too, right? So you get Ty Johnson locked up for 2 years, because who knows, really.
I was going to say, you got
I'm
him
not sounding the alarm, but who knows where the James Cook situation goes. And you now have Ray Davis for 3 more years in his rookie contract, Ty Johnson for 2 more years. Frank Gore, by the way, is the other guy that went to camp last year. They got him as an undrafted free agent. He's still on the club as he re-signed a reserve futures deal. And then Darrington Evans, He rejoins the club. He had a fantastic preseason 2 years ago. The Bills released him. He goes to Miami and Chicago, comes back. He gets hurt last preseason. They put him on IR. They ultimately released him. Why? Because Ty Johnson was so good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny how the day worked itself out. And I think that it's important to remember patience when you're talking about NFL offseason, when you're talking about these moves. At 6:25, that's what time we go on for sports, at 6 Eastern time. And I started with the Sabres today. I started with Rasmus Dahlin because that was really, really interesting stuff.
Because you were awesome in the locker room with
Thank
Rasmus
you.
Dahlin.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So I started with Dahlin, and then I was like, hey, really quiet day for the Bills. They signed Darrington Evans. I don't want to read into what this could potentially mean for Ty Johnson, but another running back who they've got familiarity with is coming back. The minute the newscast is done, Jeremy Fowler puts the Bills have signed Ty Johnson to a 2-year deal. And I go, okay, whatever. And then I come home, I'm sitting on my couch. Like, I don't know what you were doing. I was watching Severance when they signed Joey Bosa. So then all of a sudden you start scrambling and figure things out. So yeah, I mean, like, just be patient, everybody. There's more moves that are coming. They still need to add 30 more players to their roster?
Yeah, I actually have them at total of 62, so 28 more to go to get to their 90. And I would say 20 of those are draft picks / undrafted free agents. So two things. Number one, I said that about Matt, in case you don't know, maybe don't follow the hockey stuff that's going on, or you didn't see, there was a report about Rasmus Dahlin that was on a podcast, and Matt had the wherewithal and cojones to ask Rasmus Dahlin directly about it in the locker room. So it was very good in a clip that's gone viral. So I appreciate that as well. And the other thing I'll say is I do have a good Joey Bosa story about where I was. I was actually at Max's baseball practice. They were practicing indoors, but I was writing an article about the Bills special teams. It's the only spot I haven't covered on the team yet. And in the meantime, as I'm writing the article, I thought, oh, you know what? I got to get somebody on Extra Point Show from LA to talk about the other two signings, Josh Palmer and Michael Hoecht. So I was texting with a LA Chargers reporter, and I want to get his name right here. It's Fernando Ramirez. Fernando Ramirez, who covers the Chargers. Okay, this is a true story. And I literally wrote to him, hey, can you come on at 11 a.m. tomorrow? I have another guest coming on at 10:30. He said, yeah, for sure. No worries. And then he literally wrote back to me, now Bosa is headed to you guys. Ha ha. And I said, what? That's how it went down with the Chargers reporter. And I were texting with each other.
There you go. Inside information. You should have been like, oh, man, you got anything else? Like,
I know, right?
Who else is coming?
I know. So that's how I found out. And then shortly after, it was reported by all the NFL insiders. And hey, little plug here. Extra Point Show, WGR Sports Radio 550. I'm going to have Cam Da Silva, who covers the Rams, at 10:30 to talk about Michael Hoecht. And then I'm going to have Fernando Ramirez, who covers the Chargers, at 11 a.m. to talk about not only Joey Bosa, but Josh Palmer, who we'll get to as well. So where do you want to go next?
Isn't it kind of a coincidence that all of the offseason additions they've made are from Los Angeles this year?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting.
Josh
right?
Palmer, Michael Hoecht, and Joey Bosa all coming from LA.
Yes.
It's a very strange, just weird coincidence.
All right, so where do you want to go next? You want to go with Palmer or Hoecht?
We said reverse order, so Michael Hoecht would be next because Palmer was the first one that they made. And the more I looked into the Michael Hoecht move, the more I liked it. He was a name I was familiar with because, honestly, shout out, there's some really great content creators and beat reporters who cover the Buffalo Bills. And obviously, we do this podcast, but I'm also a consumer. I try and take in as much information as I can. So Cover One, they had a lot of stuff on Michael Hoecht. Joe Marino had stuff on Michael Hoecht. So it was a name that I was prepared for, mostly because I saw it suggested elsewhere. So you do a little bit of research on it and you go, okay, hey, listen, Oakville, close to home, very versatile, can do a lot of different things. And then the minute that signing happens, you go, oh, that's fun. And then you start to look into it a little bit more. And the more I've looked into it, the more I like the possibilities of what this could mean for the Bills defense.
You also liked it because his last name looks like Jochen Hecht.
Yes, exactly.
It looks like that, right?
Yes,
exactly. It is spelled Hoecht, but it is pronounced Hoyt for everybody out there to know. So this is a really, really interesting, intriguing signing for me because I actually think it's kind of a departure of what the Bills normally do. They love versatility. We know that. That's not what I mean. This guy's the most versatile guy you can find. They love versatility. But the kind of versatility they love is usually a guy who has a position, but he has the flexibility to play another position. This is a guy that doesn't really have a true position. So a lot of times the challenge with a guy like that, Matt, is where are you going to put him? Because sometimes if you can do so many things really well, then a team gets a little too caught up in that and doesn't actually focus on something you can do really well to help them win. And I think the challenge is on the Buffalo Bills defensive staff then on a weekly basis to have a really good plan on where he fits and not just say, oh, we can put him anywhere. And we'll see how it works out. I love his versatility. It reminds me a lot of Lorenzo Alexander when he came to Buffalo. He had been an offensive lineman and even a blocking tight end early in his career, moves over to the defensive line, goes out to the edge, then he plays linebacker. And oh, by the way, along the way, I think he had like 12 sacks with the Bills at the tail end of his career. So this is the kind of guy that really you can use all around your defense. But the challenge is finding the right spot for him on a weekly basis, on a down-to-down basis in a matchup situation. That's what the Bills defense, because there's not a true starting spot for him on the defense.
I love the idea of him lining up on the defensive line and dropping into coverage. I'm not suggesting the clip that has gone viral in the last 24 hours of him covering DK Metcalf out wide. Like, don't do that. Don't do that often. But I like the idea of lining him at defensive tackle and then, let's say on a 3rd and 6, dropping into coverage, because you know the offensive line is going to have to take account for, okay, this guy can rush from anywhere on the defensive line. Now all of a sudden he drops into coverage. He might close up a lane or confuse the quarterback in some ways. There's a lot of different things that they can do with him. This is a rotational player. I want to make this clear. This is not Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa is a player that you think can elevate you to win the Super Bowl. Michael Hoecht can make plays. This is a player who you think you can get the most out of to try and help you kind of get there. Not quite obviously as big of a swing, but that doesn't mean it's not a good move. I really, really like this one the more I look into it.
Yeah, and look, I think that he can also be a true backup to somebody if they do get hurt, right? If somebody gets hurt, you can say, hey, he does fit in this one spot. We're going to use him. If something were to happen to Greg Rousseau for a couple games, maybe you put Michael Hoecht on the edge. If something were to happen to one of the D tackles, he's not going to be a primary guy there, but he can fill in. He can help out. He's not an off-ball linebacker. He's not Terrell Bernard or Matt Milano. That's not what he does. And the other thing, 2 things that I really think the Bills were drawn to him. Number 1, Matt, what's the best ability? Availability.
Yeah.
He has not missed a game in 4 years of football. Knock on wood. 17 games every single season. This guy has been available all 4 years of his NFL career that he played. He actually did have 6 sacks a couple of years ago, starting all 17 games. And then the other last part is, holy cow, he's a special teams demon. He blocked 3 kicks last year. He blocked 2 field goals and an extra point last year. So the Bills are going to put him on special teams as well. And a guy that I think, will accept his role, obviously.
Yeah. One of the things that we need to figure out is if he's a Bills fan, because he said, I'm coming home after he agreed to the deal. Now, I know Southern Ontario, Buffalo, there's the connection there. But I do wonder, like, if you grow up an hour and a half from Buffalo, most people in Southern Ontario are Bills fans. It seems to be Southern Ontario are Bills fans, and then everything else is like a Lions fan or something. So I'm curious to know if he was a Bills fan and if that had any factor in his decision, because it seems like that was a guy Rams fans were really bummed was leaving. Like, they really, really rave reviews for him after the signing.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the way the Rams are building their young defense, they have guys that he just can't beat out right now, but he's a important piece for what they did. So no doubt about it. A lot of times that's a great, point you bring up, Matt, which is a lot of times you want to find out if a guy's a good signing, ask and look at what the fan base is saying about him, right? So obviously, Michael Hoecht is a guy that really endeared himself with Rams fans. And go watch some of the footage of him and the way he plays. He's totally a high motor guy that's going to fit into the Bills locker room with his character and his energy as well. All right. Then we get to Josh Palmer. So I'll start on this one and say free agency is about fit. I said this earlier and I'll say it again. This is not a player that the Bills just went out and said, we got to have a great receiver. Yeah, you can go out and try and grab a DK Metcalf or a T Higgins. And those guys are great. They can help any team. They will help any team. What the Bills have decided to do here is say, look, where do we need someone to fill in a spot that we've been deficient that could help us get to the next step? And I'm going to go back to that Sunday night game in Baltimore where Derrick Henry ran that 87-yard run to start the game. The Bills never got off the mat in that game. And part of the reason was I saw it right on the field and I said it Monday morning on the air. I went on with Jeremy and Joe and I said, guys, they could not get separation all night. They just could not separate. No. And you know what the Ravens did? Because they couldn't separate, they said, you're not beating us with your receivers, so we're just going to get up on them. We're going to push them around, and then we're going to beat up your quarterback because we're going to blitz him, and he's not going to find anybody open early enough. And that's what they did. And I was scared for Josh Allen's health, thinking about if teams were going to do that, all year against the Bills. And when the Bills' deep offense was locked down at times this year, Matt, it happened because they couldn't beat man-to-man coverage. This is a man-to-man coverage beater on the outside.
Yeah, and I think that I'm sure they like the versatility, but at the same time, sometimes I feel sick about talking about versatility because it's like, just give me a guy who's really good at something, right? Like sometimes you just need dudes. And I don't think Josh Palmer is a slam dunk signing or anything like that, but I like the fit for the Bills because he gives them something they didn't otherwise have. Shout out Carl Jones, who made the comparison on X the other day. Did you see it? He's like, wide
Sure.
receiver rooms need to be like basketball lineups.
Yep.
He's like, I want a guy who can do this. I want a guy who can do this. I want a guy who can do this. And I really like that analogy because it's like, okay, Keon Coleman can be your big, hey, I can go win contested catches. Khalil Shakir can be like your Mr. Reliable in the middle of the field, but I can still play outside. Josh Palmer can be your, all right, I'm going to go beat man coverage and I'm going to take some shots down the field, and Curtis Samuel can be your Swiss Army knife. I don't think that this means they should be done at wide receiver, but I feel like this is a nice addition to have. This is a player I'm expecting much more out of than they would have gotten with Mac Hollins. And that's not a shot at Mac Hollins, but this is a player who I think could come in and have 50, 60 catches and really make a difference for them.
Yeah, I want to talk about Mac Hollins in a minute. I agree with you. This is not a volume receiver that's going to blow you away with a bunch of all-pro numbers. But I'd venture to say he's going to have more than his 39 catches he had last year. I think it was 39 with the Chargers. He's going to maybe be the number 2 option possibly behind Khalil Shakir. Maybe he's the number 3 option, but he's going to be more involved. And the way he's going to be more involved is exactly what I said. On the outside, when a team says, we're going to play you man-to-man, this guy, look, in a lot of ways, Matt, he reminds me of Stephon Diggs. And I'll say it because of this. He's actually bigger than Stephon. Stephon was 6 foot 190. He's 6'1", 210, an inch taller and 20 pounds heavier. But the reason I say that, great route runner who wins at the top of the route and really forces a defender to not know where he's going to be when he gets to the end of his route. And then he catches the ball with guys near him. And that's why I think he's a fit for this offense, because they don't have a guy like that. So that's why I like this particular player coming to Buffalo. Now, you could not love the money. It's $12 million for each year for 3 years. But what is the actual cap hit? We don't know that. We'll see that. I totally understand if anybody says that's a little too rich for my blood for a guy that's not going to catch 60, 70 passes. I totally understand that. I listened to somebody else who was on with, I can't remember who was on. They were on a show up on the Bulldog. They said, look, in his sophomore year, he really stepped up. He was a very good player. Look at his numbers. But, the Chargers, because of the way that their wide receiver room was built, he just didn't have a lot of opportunity. But when he did, due to injury, he showed up and he played. And he, by the way, he's not slow. He's 4.52. That's not slow. It's not blazing fast, but it's fast enough to be able to get open and go down the field.
It's fast when you consider what his skill set is, right?
Yes.
Like for being a boundary wide receiver who can beat man coverage, that is still fast. And his average depth of target is pretty impressive. Like he's going to get shots. I think it's like 15 yards, right? Or something like that.
15.2, I think last year. Yeah.
So I think that they're going to utilize him in ways that they didn't have the last couple of years. I don't think that they can be done at wide receiver, but I think that this is a step towards completing that room, because once again, you want to have options. You do not know who is going to be available when you need them to be available. You want as many of these guys as possible, but I think back to what they were hoping to get out of Amari Cooper. They wanted somebody who can beat man coverage and try and stretch the field occasionally, and he just didn't have it in his game anymore. At least he didn't have it in the Bills. So I think that this is going to be more of what they wanted out of Amari Cooper, but it's also not like he's going to shy away from contact and helping in the run game and helping block like Mac Hollins did. So it feels like it can kind of be a blend of those with maybe the edge more towards the player that they wanted Amari Cooper to be.
Yeah. And they, I don't know, I had a thought in my head I wanted to say, but
I thought you were going to use that to transition to Mac Hollins.
I was going to in some way.
Which is kind of why I set it up.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah.
You brought it up, the wide receiver room, what it looks like, the names in the wide receiver room, right? Mac Hollins is not going to be one of them now. I'm surprised. We talked about it here. I thought that there was going to be a return there. I'll get into why I think it happened in a minute, but how do you think Bills fans should react to losing Mac Hollins?
Sad because of the personality and because of what he meant to the team as a guy, but I don't think they're going to miss the productivity that much. He was a very reliable red zone target for Josh Allen. I mean, he led the team in touchdowns, so you're going to have to find somebody who can contribute there. Was very good in the playoff game, but I feel like they can find somebody who can do that from a football standpoint. Not easily, because that would be a knock on Mac Hollins that isn't fair, but like you just drafted Keon Coleman. in the second round, the first pick of the second round. Like, you want him to develop into the guy who can do most of those things.
Yeah, and I think that. Here's my point I was going to make about Josh Palmer. This does not mean the Bills don't have faith in Keon Coleman being that man-to-man beater, right? I mean, you would agree with that. It just means, hey, Keon Coleman's in his second year. We like a lot of what we saw from him. He's on a great trajectory. Didn't work out at the end of the year, but we can't just rely on one guy. What if he doesn't take that next step? They still believe, I think, that Keon Coleman will take that next step and become that man-to-man beater on the outside, just like Josh Palmer, but in a different way. Let me tell everybody why I think this happened with Mack Hollins, all right? Because I've been very steadfast on the radio saying, yeah, I think the Bills and Mack Hollins very much would like a reunion. They could make that happen. And it was a surprise to me that he left. But here's what I think happened, all right? And I know for sure that Mack Hollins and his family loved being in Buffalo. Know that for sure. And I know the Bills really loved what he did for them. But I just don't think the Bills were, willing to give him 2 years. I don't know that. It seems like that would be something maybe they would back off on, given how they structure a lot of these contracts with older players. The Patriots gave him 2 years. And if they are going to, 2 years at $5 million each, he can make up to $10 million with the New England Patriots. That's a little rich, I think, for how high the Bills wanted to go, the extra year and the extra money. But more than anything, Matt, I actually think what happened here, take a look at where Mack Hollins was and who he was with when he had the greatest season of his career. He had over 50 catches and over 600 yards with Josh McDaniels and the Las Vegas Raiders. Who's the new offensive coordinator of the New England Patriots? Josh McDaniels.
That's a really good observation. That's a really good point. I think, to me, when they saw the price, this is my read on it. Your opinion, I think, is more. It's a better hypothesis. But when I saw him leave, and then when I saw Ty Johnson come back, I was like, I think they valued getting Ty Johnson back more than they valued getting Mack Hollins back, which is kind of crazy to think about, considering that Mack Hollins had led the team with touchdowns last year. Like, that's kind of crazy. I should say receiving touchdowns. But I think with all of the James Cook stuff brewing, they valued having Ty Johnson here to be their third down pass catching back and also have a contract that runs beyond what James Cook does. So I was like, okay, well, if the money is but once again, then I saw what Ty Johnson's was. You could have afforded you could have afforded both of these guys. You could have. But
let's go back to yesterday, though. I don't think it's a coincidence that we learned the Bills signed Josh Palmer, and just a couple hours later, Mack Hollins went to the Patriots. If you're Mack Hollins and the Bills signed Josh Palmer, aren't you going, wait a minute, 1, 2, 3. I'm fifth on the depth chart now. There's no room for me to get, any more playing time than I got last year. I'm just going to have the same role. And maybe he was fine with it, but he wanted more.
I have reason to believe, I'm not reporting anything. It's not like this is a big deal. I'm pretty sure the Bills wanted Mack Hollins back. They just weren't willing to pay that much money for him. Like that.
Hey, good for him. It is a business, and he's at the age now where he's put in the work in this league, and go get your money, man.
And one other thing, he has won a Super Bowl. All of these guys chase this trophy, rightfully so, and they should. A lot of players chase the idea of winning a Super Bowl.
That's a good point.
If you've won one, go get the bag, man. Like, he has made an exceptional amount of money, but we're not talking about a $330 million contract like Josh Allen just got. He needs to get as much money right now to set himself and his family up for the rest of his life. You've already won the Super Bowl. Go get whoever's going to pay you the most money after that. I feel like if I was a player, that's what if you weren't with the same team for your entire career, and he clearly has not been, I would be doing the same thing. Going to places that were paying me money if I hadn't won a Super Bowl. If I hadn't won a Super Bowl, I would be the guy trying to get as close to one as humanly possible. I don't think at this point he cares.
If you follow me on social at Sal Sports on X/Twitter, I always, every time there's a move, I tweet out the Bills' current roster. I have them at 62 active players and only 4 additions: Josh Palmer, Darrington Evans, Joey Bosa, and Michael Hoecht. That's it. And the Bills don't have a ton of money to use. They've done some restructuring. We know that. They've given out extensions. They move some money around. I think this deal for Joey Bosa probably means they're bargain shopping for the rest of free agency. What do you think?
You think so?
I mean, I can't see. I think they opened up good amount of space with everything they did. But yeah, I mean, maybe another mid-level guy, but there's nothing really big I would think they'd be able to do on the horizon.
I would feel like the topper would be like one more $10 million player.
Okay.
That would be my You think
Okay.
you think I'm being too generous there?
No, I think there's always a way. If you want to do it, there's always a way. There's no doubt.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's a guy out there for them to do that,
Mhm.
except at corner, maybe, right? Is there a corner? Maybe there's a corner that they feel. There was a bit of a rumbling of Asante Samuel Jr. Apparently,
Mhm.
that was just kind of
Well, Los
not.
Angeles.
Yeah. Apparently, that wasn't really accurate. There was
Uh-huh.
maybe one of these sites that just put stuff out that's not true.
Well,
But
he
it
can't
did get me.
tackle.
Well, but it got me thinking for a second. That's correct. He's not a great tackler. But I'm going to say, I think we've seen some indications the Bills might be willing to change their defense a little bit. And maybe they don't want to put as much of a premium on it if they're going to play more man-to-man this year. I'm not saying I think that's true or likely.
Mhm.
I just, when I saw that, I'm like, wait a minute, he can't tackle very well. But maybe they're thinking, okay, this is it. We're going to do a little bit different now.
I have one other theory. It's
Okay.
not a great one, but it's just kind of a vibes thing, and it works out conveniently enough with what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Kupp.
Do they need Cooper Kupp? I mean, he's really just a slot guy, right?
He's not. He's like, I mean, I don't know how much juice he has left, but I know they really liked him in 2018. They really liked him. Yeah, Josh's rookie year. I think they came into the league the same year. So I know they really liked him then. He was playing in Los Angeles, which clearly, I guess, matters right now. And
Yeah.
I feel like then it would free them up to completely go after the defense in the draft. I mean,
I think Cooper Kupp feels like a Chiefs kind of move.
Yeah, it does. The one thing it doesn't.
By the way, speaking of the Chiefs, DeAndre Hopkins signed with the Ravens.
Yeah, the Bills, if they're going to add one more wide receiver, it should probably be a burner. That is not Cooper Kupp. That is
maybe
not.
You get that in the draft, Matt.
But that's why I'm like, okay, you could go get Bond. What was
Isaiah Bond?
Isaiah Bond, the guy who thought he was going to beat Xavier Worthy. Like, he's going to be like an early day 3 pick. So if you're the Bills, wouldn't you feel great about drafting or signing a player like Cooper Kupp or one more veteran receiver, a burner in the draft, and then you use your first 3 picks on dealer's choice, defensive tackle, cornerback, and then another edge rusher. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, we really did revamp kind of all the positions of need.
Yeah, but it's really interesting how the offense has kind of already been taking care of. It's kind of taking care of itself here. Josh Palmer, Darrington Evans, the only additions. They are set on O-line. They're set at tight end. They're fairly set at wide receiver, except for the points that Matt's making here. They're set at running back. They're set at quarterback. Not the same on defense. We'll see if they, what they add at cornerback. They could still use more on the defensive line as well.
Let me ask you this one question. Are they more likely? I think we would both say defensive line would be the most likely thing they do in the first round. Are they more likely in the first round to take a wide receiver or a cornerback?
Corner. I don't think they're very likely at all to take a wide receiver in the first round. I think that's out of the question, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's not, who's he playing over? A rookie wide receiver first round guy is not playing, and the Bills are not, I think, taking a guy that's going to do that.
No, I don't think that they have to. I just think that you would want another high upside guy, because a lot of this depends on what they feel about Keon Coleman. If they still believe in and I think they do, if they still really believe in Keon Coleman, then I think that it could be more of a day 2 pick, like a second round pick. But if they're a little bit scared about what they saw from Keon Coleman, I think that they could start to see a world where they think of Keon Coleman as a role player. It would
take a lot more to have them feel that way about Keon Coleman. I know what they've said about, like, well, he wasn't the same player, but Sean McDermott talked like that about James Cook after his first year.
No, that's a good point.
I don't think wide receiver is even in play at all in the first round. I'll be quite honest with you. I think a wide receiver is in play beyond that, but I just don't see how they think a guy's going to come in here and actually play. I mean, they needed a wide receiver more last year and didn't take one in the first round. He was the first pick of the second round, but they traded down twice even before they did it. It just doesn't feel like the kind of position.
Selfishly, it's just so fun. It's just so much more fun. A wide receiver is just so much more fun to talk about than a 3 tech.
No, I totally get that. Last time we were here, last thing for me. Last time we were on the podcast, we talked a little bit about Sam Martin being released, and we were talking about the punter, Jake Camarda is his name. So I'm writing up this State of the Bill special teams, which will be available at the WGR550.com website. And I looked into Jake Camarda a little bit. You familiar with him at all? Like anything he's done?
There's nothing I know about Jake Camarda other than how many games he played, where he was drafted, and that he signed with the Bills on January 7th.
Okay. Jake Camarda punted for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
In 22 and 23, he was top 5 in the NFL in yards per punt in both years.
So why did they cut him?
So
is it a hang time thing?
No. So in 2024, he only plays 4 games and then he gets released for somebody. So I reached out to my buddy TJ Reeves, the sideline reporter for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I said, hey, dude, what's the deal with Camarda? Like, he's got good numbers. Why did they move on? Here's what he wrote to me. He said, very impressed with him until our new special teams coach screwed with his head and screwed him up. And then we cut him, and then we cut 2 more of his replacement punters during the season. First time in Buccaneers history, 4 different guys punted. Feels like it's not a Jake Camarda problem. It was a special teams coach problem and kind of got into his head a little bit. But this guy actually has been very successful in a very short time in the NFL.
Well, there you go.
He was the special teams player of the month once and twice the special teams player of the week.
Sometimes special teams more than anything in football seems like it's mental. So change of scenery sometimes are needed. Dylan Cousins, Josh Norris, any sport, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you need to change the scenery. So I would imagine they do something there, and then there's a competition, whether it's an undrafted free agent or if they really love a guy, they draft somebody. There's some veterans that are popping out there. But I think I saw like Sam Martin got like $3 million or something for the initial report from the Panthers. I think the Bills aren't in the business of doing that right now.
Speaking of the Panthers, real quick, do you think the Bills would bring back Dane Jackson?
Yes. I almost am betting on it. I feel like tomorrow I told Dom Tibbetts at work, I was like, I won't be surprised if there's like a slew of announcements that are made right after the new league year that haven't really been reported. And the names that I said were, doesn't it just feel like it would be like, oh, Dane Jackson returns to Buffalo on a 1-year, $2 million deal. Like
did you tell Dom to go find some B-roll of Dane Jackson because you're going to use some in the newscast?
No, we've already got it because he played for the Bills previously.
That's what I mean. Like, go find some of our old B-roll.
Go cut some stuff. Yeah. But I will say, shout out ESPN already hooking us up with the Joey Bosa video. We're finishing this at 10:57. 3 minutes. It'll be on fresh, ready to go. Channel 7, 11 o'clock news.
Okay. Well, speaking of 11 o'clock, that's what time it is here on a Tuesday night. Being After Dark. So the podcast dropped, emergency podcast. Matt Bove, thanks for being awake and ready and able to do this. And of course, to all of you out there, thanks for watching here at the Sal Sports YouTube page. If you're only listening, that's where you can see us. If you're watching, you can always just listen to us as well. Download us, subscribe to us, give us a nice rating, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Thanks a lot to our producer, Mike Robier. Matt, the new league year starts on Wednesday. Happy New Year, buddy.
Do you have any New Year's resolutions for the new league year? Mine's to cover a Super Bowl. That's my New Year's resolution.
It'd be really nice. I'd love that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I don't think I have one this year.
Nothing.
You threw in on. I'm not a big New Year's resolution guy, to be honest. I've always kind of been. Yes. I have one. You ready? I thought about this today. Every year, Matt. Every year I say this, and every year it doesn't work out. So I'm gonna make it a resolution now in the new league year starting instead of. So even though I was mad at myself this week, every year I say, stop paying too much attention to a lot of the comments you see this time of year on social media that come back at you after a Bill sign a guy. And every year I fail myself and I get caught up in it.
Yeah.
And I did that again this week. Not in a bad way necessarily, but I'm like, why am I even debating with this person? They have they're just they clearly don't understand what's going on, or they clearly have this one opinion that you just can't give them any information to help change their mind. And not that I have to change anybody's mind, but we should all think critically at least and be open to understanding, what's going on. So anyway, my New Year's resolution is to kind of ignore that a little bit more.
I like that. That's a very deep and philosophical thought. Mine was just simply, I want to cover a Super Bowl. So different ends of the spectrum here, I guess.
Hey, believe me, pal, I want to do that as well. I'd love to call one, no doubt about it. Thanks a lot for tuning in to It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. We'll talk to you next time, which is going to be probably pretty soon.